In the early hours of May 29th, 1453, a deafening explosion shattered the silence over Constantinople. Ottoman soldiers surged through the broken walls and climbed their ladders into the city. Emperor Constantine XI took off his imperial purple, drew his sword, and charged into the chaos. He was never seen again. When Sultan Mehmed II rode his white horse into Hagia Sophia and turned the 1,000-year-old cathedral into a mosque, the Byzantine Empire, after more than 11 centuries of history, finally came to an end. This was more than a city's fall. It marked the border between the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, a turning point that changed the world. At the heart of this conquest stood a weapon unlike any before it. Urban's great cannon, a true supercannon, helped the Ottomans shatter the walls once thought unbreakable. Before the War of 1453, Constantinople had been the ultimate symbol of defense in Europe. Its walls and fortifications, built from Roman engineering and Byzantine strategy, had protected the city for 1,000 years. No army had ever taken it head-on. At the center of its defenses stood the Theodosian walls. This was not a single barrier, but a complex system of 3 lines and a moat. The outer moat was 20 meters wide and 10 meters deep. Beyond it rose a small front wall, 2 meters high, and behind that, 2 massive walls guarded the city. The outer wall stood 8 meters tall, built from granite and lined with battlements for archers and catapults. The inner wall reached 12 meters in height and more than 5 meters thick. Every 50 meters, towers rose another 20 meters above, serving as barracks, armories, and vantage points for defenders. In the age of swords and spears, this system was almost unbeatable. The moat stopped cavalry, the low wall slowed infantry, and the twin main walls turned every assault into slaughter. Geography made the city even stronger. Built where the Bosphorus meets the Sea of Marmara, Constantinople was surrounded by water on 3 sides. Only the western land bridge offered access, and that was sealed behind the Theodosian walls. At sea, the Byzantines had stretched a giant iron chain across the mouth of the Golden Horn, blocking enemy ships. For 1,000 years, the city had survived attacks from Goths, Persians, Arabs, and Bulgarians. Even during the Fourth Crusade in 1204, it fell only through betrayal inside the walls, not through force. By 1453, however, Byzantium was a shadow of its past. Crusader plunder and decades of war had reduced the empire to little more than the city itself. Its population had dropped from over 1 million to fewer than 50,000. Only about 8,000 soldiers stood ready to defend the walls. 2,000 of them were Italian mercenaries. Facing them was a rising power, the Ottoman Empire. Led by the 21-year-old Sultan Mehmed II, it now controlled lands across Europe and Asia. He brought tens of thousands of troops, more than 100 warships. For Mehmed, taking Constantinople was not just strategy. It was destiny. Before the siege began, the Sultan offered Emperor Constantine a deal. Surrender peacefully, and he could keep rule over southern Greece. The emperor refused. He knew Constantinople was the last shield of Christendom in the east. If it fell, nothing would stop the Ottomans from advancing deep into Europe. Negotiations ended. The siege began. Sultan Mehmed II understood one thing clearly. No ordinary siege weapon could break through the Theodosian walls. He had already sent scouts to study the structure up close. The conclusion was the same. Traditional catapults were useless. What he needed was something new, something massive. That weapon would come not from a Muslim engineer, but a Christian. The man was Urban, a cannon founder from Hungary. He had once approached the Byzantines, offering to build his great weapon for them. But Emperor Constantine XI short on funds and resources, had to decline. Urban then turned to the Ottomans. Mehmed welcomed him with open arms. He offered unlimited funding, full access to raw materials, and even a personal workshop. With this support, Urban began to build one of the largest cannons the world had ever seen. It was cast in bronze, with a barrel over 8 meters long and a diameter close to 75 centimeters. The cannon weighed more than 15 tons and fired giant stone balls, some nearly 600 kilograms. To prevent cracking, the barrel walls were over 10 centimeters thick, with a spherical chamber to better absorb pressure. Every shot shook the earth like thunder. Forging such a weapon in the 15th century was no easy task. Bronze melts at over 1,000 degrees Celsius. It took vast amounts of charcoal, expert casting, and weeks of precision work. Even a single flaw could destroy the barrel. After 2 months, the cannon was complete. In its first test, the projectile flew nearly 2 kilometers and created a crater 1 meter deep. The sound was heard from nearby villages. Mehmed was thrilled. He named it the Empire's Hammer and ordered more cannons based on Urban's design. But building the cannon was only the beginning. The next challenge was transportation. A weapon that weighed over 15 tons couldn't be pulled on normal carts. Urban designed a special wooden platform with dozens of rollers. It was pulled by 60 oxen and pushed by 200 men. The cannon moved at just 2 or 3 kilometers per day. It took 40 days to cover the 200 kilometers from the foundry to Constantinople. When the cannon finally arrived at the city walls, the defenders were stunned. Many had never seen such a weapon before. Some believed it was made by sorcery or even by the devil himself. On April 6, 1453, the siege of Constantinople officially began. Mehmed II positioned Urban's great cannon at the center of the land walls. This was the area where the Theodosian defenses were weakest. Each morning, the giant bombard was fired, shaking the ground and sending granite projectiles crashing into the walls. The cannon was slow to reload. It could fire only a few times per day. But combined with the rest of the Ottoman artillery, the bombardment was relentless. Stone by stone, the walls began to crumble. The Byzantines fought to hold the line. Every night, soldiers and workers rushed to repair the damage. They filled craters with wood, stones, and bricks. Sometimes they built inner wooden barriers to slow down attackers. But the pounding never stopped. Each time a breach was patched, another shot would reopen it. The psychological toll was enormous. After weeks of bombardment, many defenders began to suffer. Some developed tinnitus from the constant blasts. Others collapsed under stress and exhaustion. Meanwhile, Mehmed unleashed a full arsenal of siege tactics. Siege towers were pushed toward the walls to allow his soldiers to climb up and fight on the battlements. Sappers dug tunnels beneath the walls, hoping to collapse them with explosives. The Ottoman navy also attacked from the sea, trying to break through the massive iron chain blocking the Golden Horn. The Byzantines resisted with everything they had. Emperor Constantine led from the front, helping with repairs and boosting morale. Italian mercenaries, armed with early firearms, fought off wave after wave of assaults. Weeks passed. The Ottomans suffered heavy losses. No breakthrough came. At one point, even Mehmed considered calling off the siege. Then came a turning point. Ottoman scouts discovered a critical weakness. To the north of the city, the Galata district was controlled by Genoese merchants, not Byzantine soldiers. Mehmed sent envoys and made them an offer. He would guarantee their trade rights in the future Ottoman Empire if they allowed his ships safe passage. They agreed. Mehmed then ordered a bold maneuver. Over 70 warships were dragged overland, across the hills behind Galata, and into the Golden Horn. Ottoman soldiers laid down wooden planks, greased them with animal fat, and used oxen to pull the ships. By dawn, the Ottoman fleet had bypassed the chain and appeared behind the city's sea walls. The Byzantines were shocked. Now, they had to split their already thin forces between the land and the harbor. The noose was tightening. On the night of May 28th, Mehmed called a final war council. He announced that at dawn, the Ottomans would launch a full assault. To motivate the troops, he promised 3 days of unrestricted looting if the city fell. Inside the city, the defenders knew the end was near. Food and ammunition were running low. The population was exhausted. That night, Emperor Constantine joined a final mass at Hagia Sophia. Then he returned to the walls, prepared to die with his city. The fall of Constantinople was not just the end of an empire. It marked the end of an entire era. Urban's great cannon symbolized the dawn of a new age. It was the beginning of gunpowder and artillery warfare. For centuries, thick walls had been the ultimate defense. But in 1453, stone could no longer stop steel. In the years that followed, European powers took notice. They raced to develop more powerful cannons and new siege tactics. Castle designs changed. High vertical walls were replaced with low, angled fortifications that could absorb cannon fire. Military strategy shifted from fortress sieges to fast, open-field battles. Trade was transformed, too. With Constantinople in Ottoman hands, land routes between Europe and Asia were disrupted. European kingdoms, especially Portugal and Spain, began looking for sea routes to the east. This shift sparked the age of exploration. It marked a new chapter in world history. The fall also triggered an intellectual migration. As the Byzantine Empire collapsed, many Greek scholars fled westward. They brought ancient manuscripts and classical knowledge to Italy. This helped ignite the Renaissance, a revival of science, art, and philosophy that reshaped Europe. At the same time, the Ottomans were rising. With Constantinople as their new capital, renamed Istanbul, they solidified their empire. Sultan Mehmed II preserved many of the city's cultural landmarks. He invited scholars, artists, and craftsmen from across the Islamic world and beyond. Istanbul became a vibrant center of trade, learning, and diplomacy. The conquest also opened the door to further expansion. In the next 2 centuries, the Ottoman Empire pushed deep into Europe. It conquered the Balkans and reached as far as Hungary and Vienna. For Christian Europe, this was the beginning of a long period of confrontation. Today, when we stand before Hagia Sophia, once a church, then a mosque, and now again a mosque, we see more than a building. We see the moment when history turned. The fall of Constantinople was the collapse of a 1,000-year empire. But it was also the birth of the modern world. And at the center of it all was a cannon. It was a weapon so massive, it changed not just a city, but the course of civilization.